was no hospital in Georgetown then, and we were living in Myrtle Beach anyway, but there wasn't one there either. So she had to go to Florence and went up there a month before we were born. It was kind of a tricky situation. And the doctor said, "Miss Doyle, you're going to have twins." And the head nurse, who'd been there much longer than the doctor, whispered to her on the way into the delivery room, "Miss Doyle, you're going to have triplets." And she was right. She knew what she was talking about. So that was in 1929. Of the three of us, Ingle was first, then I came, and then James was the third birth. When somebody lived in the hospital from Georgetown, was going back home that day, and he asked my father, "Well, Joe, is there anything I can do for you?" And my father reportedly said, "Yes, take up a collection, because they're born on the installment plan." It was across the street from the river,
right,
from Sanpet River, which back then was not as polluted.
Right.
Called the New York Times article, it was the most polluted river in North America.
Wow.
That was over 10 years ago they had that printed, I think. Anyway, that's my father tied a rope around each one of us, and on Cthulhu's dock, and a fishing dock, and held us until we got into water, and then made believe he was holding us while we learned to swim, all back and forth across the dock. And we didn't realize he had finally just relaxed the rope altogether. And then we were swimming by then, you know, and wow, this is great. So every time a ship came in for the International Paper Company, would come that way, and they'd make waves, and we'd start running to the river. Start taking off your clothes and run to the river and jump in the water to catch the waves. Well, I didn't realize there was a depression, of course, and they didn't say anything about it, but we didn't get an allowance until long after other kids were getting so much money a week. We didn't know about it. But my father, yeah, you know, just couldn't do it. There were 6 of us. When we finally got a little older and things eased up a little bit, we all got a nickel a week. And then he changed that to a quarter a week.
Wow.
So we felt wealthy then, you know. Well, they had one movie house called the Peerless, I think it was called. And you could go to movies there on Saturday if you got that quarter in time to do it. But we didn't go to a lot of movies. Okay. You know, I remember. I was going to say I remember, but I really don't remember any of the movies I saw. Mm-hmm. Most of them were westerns or horror films or something like that. You know, mm-hmm. You know. But it was fun to go. Joseph's store was there. And
close to the town clock.
Right next to the town clock, I think it was, yeah.
Right.
And Ford's store was there.
C.L. Ford.
Ford, and a hardware store and a grocery store. Mm-hmm. And of course the bank was on the other side of the street. It was moved down where it is now, where it used to be more or less in the middle of that block. Mm-hmm. And there was a pool hall there. You could walk by and watch people play pool. I didn't do that, but anyway, you looked when you went by, you know, see what's going on, mm-hmm. that kind of thing. But I can't remember much else, you know.
That's right.
You didn't go much beyond there anyway. We went to the first grade with Miss Minnie Condon was the teacher. She had been, yeah. Okay. And I never will forget when the teacher, I had a rubber band. I didn't make a slingshot on purpose, but I had it that way, and I didn't mean to do anything. But it slipped out of my, and a piece of paper. I had a little wad of paper, and it went up and went right by the teacher's head and hit the blackboard. Of course, she said, "You stay in at recess." She
knew immediately.
Oh, she saw us, you see. Oh, okay. And she had a bench in the side of the room, and said, "You stay on the bench and you don't go to recess today." And the bell rang to go to recess, and by that time I was so devastated, I was crying. This was the end of the world for me. So my brother Engel came up the fire escape steps right outside the window of that room, and he hollered to me, he said, "Come on, you go out the window, I'll come sit there for you." Because we looked so much alike.
Right.
And I did. I went out and played shinny with the other kids, and Engel sat on the bench, and Miss Congdon never knew who it was. Today she didn't see the difference at all.
Wow.
And I always thought that was a funny story. It was such a daring thing for a first grader to do. The Harrelsons.
The Harrelsons.
Harrelsons. And their father was the person who opened and closed the bridge, the drawbridge, because you had to do it mechanically. And their house was right there in the marsh area, really.
Right.
And he would open the bridge for any ship that went through.
Okay.
So, and they, I think, had a couple other children too, in addition to the 3 boys. Okay. So there were 2 sets of triplets in Georgetown, and they were older than we were. I don't think any of them is living now. The ferry came to the end of Front Street.
Okay.
At the end of Front Street, from St. James Street to the river, was all still dirt. And we would go down every Sunday afternoon, and the little, maybe I shouldn't put this in, the little darkies would come sing. My father would throw them a nickel, and they would sing songs for us while we were waiting on the ferry. And then we got on the ferry and went across one and then up to the other, where the second bridge is now.
Okay.
Well, where the old one is.
Right.
And then drove on for Pawleys Island from there. It was a lot of fun to ride on the ferry. You got out of your car and stood on the prow and got all the breeze.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, my father had a cigarette and he flipped it overboard. Well, he thought it went overboard, but the breeze blew it back. And it landed inside our car and burnt a hole in the seat. My father was furious with us about it, you know. But you got homesick.
Right.
They were very busy. These people made you didn't get too homesick because they had you doing something all the time.
Right.
So your mind wasn't on home. It was on what you needed to do. And of course, Engel went to the Naval Academy after the second year, and James and I went ahead and finished. Well, James was in, but they didn't send him over there, thank God.
Okay.
I was turned down for the military. So I often wondered why I went to military school. Started with 7th and 8th grade students in junior high school. I was in the classroom where I went to the 2nd grade.
Okay.
So it turned out to be Miss Hess Smith's class, her room. I always identified it with her because she was such a nice person. And it worked pretty well. Somebody else could have done a better job. I didn't major in history. Oh yes, I remember going by there when prisoners were up there upstairs, with the barred windows and the whole bit, you know. As a matter of fact, I don't know whether you want this or not, but they had a Sunday I was going to church, and there was a man in jail, and a group of people on the corner did not think he should have been jailed, and there were a crowd of them on the corner. And I walked across and went right through them, and there was one man had his hand all bandaged up, and I noticed something in the hand. It was a pistol.
Wow.
Wrapped up in bandage. So I hurried on to church. So I didn't stick around to see what was going to happen there, but I really don't know what happened, but I saw that. Well, yes, I remember when President Roosevelt came to visit with the Baruchs, with Bernard Baruch, and the whole town was not supposed to know, but of course everybody did. Somebody talked that shouldn't have, you know. And it was very exciting to think the president was over there.
Right.
And well, they had, I was told, they had agents hiding in the woods, the entrance to the place, up in the trees even, being sure that nothing was going to go wrong, or no one was going to get in that wasn't supposed to get in, that kind of thing. So my cousin, Eileen Donaldson, was a friend of Belle Baruch's, and she was invited over there a number of times. So, and she asked me after Mr. Baruch had died. Anyway, went over there once when it was a nice visit, and she was my cousin was in the hospital at one time also, and Miss Baruch had just been up there to see her, and so I went over to her car as she was sitting there ready to drive out, and spoke to her and told her how much my cousin enjoyed her visits, because I said, you always keep people laughing, and she seemed to appreciate that. So. Yeah, she was a nice lady. Not others, not a great deal of others at all. But that was the main thing. Of course, there were sealing ships before that, you see, and I can remember one of probably the last one that ever came into the port. We would go, all three of us and Eddie Schultz, our good friend, would go making way. So we went over to see this new boat, the ship, three-masted schooner it was, and climbed up, and they didn't care. They invited us almost. So we dove off the end of that into the water to see how that was.
How old were you at this time?
I guess 13 or 14, old enough to know better. No, that Sea Cloud was not, this was an old vessel. Sea Cloud was a sort of modern sailing ship. But speaking of the Sea Cloud, I missed a chance to go on board. And I kind of resented it for years, but I could see the point now. I had a job, the first job I ever had was with the telephone company. Lots of people who got messages or phone calls who didn't have a telephone. So you had to go tell them and come to the office and get your call. So I had the job of seeking these people out. And then I had to learn to share it with my two brothers. Whose turn is it to take the message, you know? So when they came for a message for the Sea Cloud, I can't think of her name, Barbara Hutton. Message for Barbara Hutton to come to the telephone. It wasn't my turn to take the message.
Wow,
and I resented it for a long time, but I got over it all right. But it was a beautiful boat, beautiful.
Was it Engel or James?
Engel took the message, I think, yeah. Right across from the town clock on the corner.
Upstairs?
Upstairs. You would have to go there and then get your phone, or when I went to get the message, I had to go upstairs to where all the ladies were working with the things around the necks and the things you punched. And one of them said to me, she knew who I was, she said, you see your 237, that number up there, that's got your telephone, your home phone, you see that dent in it? Because that gets used more than any phone in Georgetown. Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And the town clock bell would ring, wake you up in the middle of the night, scare you to death. Yeah, I remember that. Well, there are a lot more people in school now than there were then. So it's a matter of having to take care of a greater number, which isn't easy. They tried, and the problem was rarely you could find anything for three. They would have things for twins all over the place, but not triplets. So, and after a while, we got bored with that idea anyway. The heck with that, you know. It'd be more individualistic to have your own in the first place. I don't know whether I can tell you something. One of the things the kids don't do anymore was play marbles. Did you grow up playing marbles?
Yes, sir.
They had them all over the schoolyard, and that was something. You could bring home a big new marble, you know, that was something. My father got all three of us a bicycle each, and not only that, he got to go stick on letters from the dime store, and you put your initials on the handlebar, not the crossbar thing. That was something. All three of us.
What about BB guns, slingshots?
Oh, yeah, I had them too. Oh, I never would shoot anything though. No, I couldn't make myself shoot something living. I just wouldn't do it. A snake maybe, but no. Oh boy, if one got it, we all got it. So our house became a hospital. Every whatever we hadn't had, we'd get, you know. We wound up with everything, just about measles and whooping cough and the whole bit. By the way, she's not just my cousin, she's a double first cousin.
Double first cousin.
My father and her father were brothers,
Okay.
and my mother and her mother were sisters.
Wow.
So they're not just first cousins, they're double first cousin. Yeah. She went to the medical college in Charleston, and then did her other further work out in the Midwest somewhere. I can't remember that. And that's St. Louis, I think.
Okay.
St. Louis, and then set up a practice across the street from the backyard of the school. There was a little office there, very near the ice plant where that is now on the back of the street, you see. And she set out there. That's where she started. And then the Pyatts built this place right next to the hospital. After the hospital, then she moved in there, which was a big help to her. For one thing, it was difficult and tricky. You felt that way whether it was so or not, for her to take calls in the middle of the night, you know, and by herself. And she'd go. She'd get in the car and go. But once they had the hospital, it made a big difference. And it made a big difference for her to have her office right across the street, too, from the hospital. So that worked out very well. I've always been very proud of Frances, going all she did, you know. She did. And I think from all I've ever heard, she was a very good doctor. So I would think so, because she was a very bright person, I can tell you that. Oh, there were 3 cakes every year. 23rd of March, you'd have a dining room had 3 cakes with candles on all 3 of them. And we all stood up and counted, I think about 10. It took a deep breath and everybody blew out all the candles at one time, and almost always there was 1 or 2 candles you didn't get, you know. But that was a lot of fun. We had fun doing that. In real estate and insurance.
Okay.
I've often wondered, I don't know, and I have no way of finding out, but I think maybe that's, my guess is, that's how he afforded to send us to college, because the whole south end of Pawleys Island, he sold those lots, all of them, the whole south end. And that was, I look back and say, well, where would he have got the money to send us to college except that? And that might have done it, you know, because people bought up the lots.
Right.
Oh yeah, in a hurry. My older brother, Joe, was named for my father, was killed in World War II.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right. I'm sorry.
well, that was awful. That was a terrible, terrible
Oh,
experience. It's unbelievable. He's buried in Italy, in Nettuno.
Okay.
It's a little village on the coast south of Rome, about 30 miles southeast of Rome. He was buried in Nettuno, was this little village area where the United States government got a large property to cemetery, and it's beautifully kept and beautifully, everything about it is perfect. And I visited it twice, so yes. So, and I was very pleased, and I was awfully pleased that my father was able to go with us. He and Mary, my wife Mary, and we took him, and when we got to Europe, we went to France and had to change planes, and then got into Italy, and that's when he went to Nettuno. I'm so glad he had that chance. And he was a devout Roman Catholic, and he also went to St. Peter's to see, and so had that to remember. Yes, but you know, if you lose someone in the war, it makes everybody was shouting and just living it up, you know. And all I wanted to do was come home. And all of us went home. I was over at Pawleys Island when I heard it. And I got on the highway and thumbed a ride home as fast as I could. I didn't feel like rejoicing at all. That sort of made it final that he's not coming back, you know. We used to catch rides to Pawleys Island almost any time you wanted to. Just stand on the road and put your thumb up and they'd stop, take you. Oh yeah, the old one, Lafayette Pavilion, oh yeah. I think I learned a jitterbug there. And it was a popular place, a lot of people went. And I don't know, I got to know the lady who owned it and her nephew. And I would spend, they had that 2 rows of houses across the street from the pavilion. It was all from the ocean to the creek they owned. And I stayed over there a lot of times with them.
Now, was that the Brickmans or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The Pauline Brickman. Well, I didn't learn how to jitterbug there. My older sister taught me to jitterbug right there at 528 Front Street. Yes. And of course, when we were teenagers in high school, the old, I can't think of the name of the place that torn it all down now, where the city hall is now.
Right.
There was,
wasn't there a power plant or
a huge round,
or something? Yeah.
And the kids, they let the high school kids have upstairs to have dances and things. And that's where I learned to bug that at home. So we did that before, because see, Pawleys Island is no good except in the summertime. So we went there at wintertime. So. And I'm really glad, because that was a nice thing to do. And it was popular, everybody liked it. Always, all the crowd went.